There are 9 very clear signs that will tell you if you're in ketosis or not. Now, being in ketosis is very, very important, not just to lose weight, but to get rid of a lot of health problems, diseases, inflammatory conditions that someone has. And the problem with testing yourself for ketones to see if you're in ketosis or not is when you're doing a urine test, for example, or a breath analyzer test, they're not very accurate. Well, maybe at first they might be a good thing, but as soon as you start to burn ketones more efficiently, those extra wasted ketones are not going to show up in your urine. They're not going to show up in your breath, but those values could be zero. So those tests are not very accurate. Now, blood test is pretty accurate, but it's expensive. You have to stick yourself. There's a little pain involved. But I'm going to show you 9 different signs or clues to tell you if you're in ketosis or not. Now, number one relates a bit more to transitioning into ketosis. Usually it takes about 2 to 3 days, depending on how low your carbs are. And there's usually three symptoms that a lot of people have if they don't do either the B vitamin supplements or electrolytes and sea salt, because all three of these transitional signs or symptoms can be related to something missing in the diet. Because when you do keto, you need more B vitamins, and a lot of times you need more electrolytes. And that would be number one, keto flu, number two, keto fatigue, and number three, keto rash. Now, if you're doing the healthy version of the ketogenic diet and you're really making sure that your foods are nutrient dense and higher quality, the chances of you getting these symptoms are much less versus someone doing the dirty version of keto, which is basically you're just doing low carb and you're not paying attention to the quality of foods. And another side note on that, if you get diarrhea, for example, that usually is related to consuming a lot more vegetables because I recommend that you do include a good amount of greens or salad on this program to get certain minerals and certain vitamins. But some people are just not used to consuming like 7 cups or 10 cups of salad per day. And so, because they don't have the microbes to break all that fiber down, they might get diarrhea. On the flip side, people that have keto breath, that's usually related because they're not consuming enough greens to kind of counter some of the ketones that you're breathing out. But let's go to number two. This is a big one. This is called weight loss. Okay, you're going to lose weight. Initially, you may lose a lot of weight, like 7 to 14 pounds in the first 1 to 2 weeks. Now, why do you lose so much weight initially? Because simply the first part of this weight loss is going to be water weight loss. When your body has been consuming a lot of carbs, with that stored glucose, you also store a lot of water. So for every gram of glucose that you store, your body stores 3 grams of water. So it's like 3 times as much water. So people that do a high carb diet are literally, they're just filled with water. When you start getting them off carbs, they dump and get rid of a lot of water weight. So the first week or even week and a half, they might lose a ton of weight. And then it comes down to like 1 to 2 pounds loss, and they're usually depressed at that time because they think, wow, it's not working anymore. So maybe I should go on to another diet when in fact it was working. They just didn't realize it was water weight. You have to realize that the most fat you could possibly burn per week is about 2 pounds, and that's with a healthy body. Now, that's not including a lot of fasting. That's just going on this keto plan. Because if you start adding more fasting and like you're fasting for some days, and then the weight loss goes up to 3, 4, 5, or even a little bit more weight of actual fat loss per week. But when you start losing weight, especially after the second week when all the water is gone, then you can kind of know that you're burning fat and the weight's coming off. All right, number three, this is a good one. Your clothes are looser around your midsection. This is a really good indication that you're in ketosis and it's working because the first thing that's going to happen is your liver is going to start dumping fat. And when you start getting rid of the fatty liver, you also start losing weight around your organs, and that's called visceral fat. And that's in your midsection. So as your midsection shrinks, it's a really good indication that it is working, which is way more important than losing weight because of this. What you're fixing when you're doing the ketogenic diet is insulin resistance. And the insulin receptor is becoming more receptive and it's working. And one of the functions of insulin is to help you absorb nutrients, especially amino acids. So you're healing the body with more proteins, especially if you're menopausal, you have atrophy. That's a good thing. So you're getting more protein, and that's a bit heavier per weight if you compare that to actual fat per weight. So it's all about getting healthy to lose weight, not lose weight to get healthy. And part of getting healthy is to be able to absorb these nutrients and allow these proteins to get in your body. When a lot of people start out, they have insulin resistance and they're usually deficient in amino acids because they can't pull it in. So they have a hard time absorbing protein. All right, that was number three. Number four, energy increase. Why? Because ketones come from fat, dietary fat, and your body fat. And if we take a look at the two fuel sources, we have fat and glucose. We look at the calories in fat per gram compared to the calories in carbs per gram. Fat is 9, carbs are 4. That's less than half of the calories. So there's more than twice as much energy in fat than glucose. And when you go into ketosis, you're tapping into all this stored fat or potential energy. So you get to have that back and use that to actually get things done. Versus when you're not in ketosis, you're running on glucose and you're dependent on the next meal that you eat because you're eating so darn frequently. And the burning of fat and ketones are a much more efficient and cleaner fuel. Number five is your cognitive function increases. That's memory, focus, and attention. That's because ketones fix your brain, they fix the nerve cell. If you have damage in your neurons from too much sugar, okay, because that basically damages the mechanism and it kind of starves out the neurons. And this is why diabetics have a greater incidence of dementia and problems with the cognitive function because of the destruction in the brain. But when you're in ketosis, these ketones feed the brain cells directly, they bypass this damage, and finally, your brain cells get fuel and your cognitive function increases. Like when I am fasting in the morning, I'm really in the hardcore ketosis and I do these videos. I have much less editing. They just like, I can just go right through it very fast. Versus if I eat and try to do a video, takes a lot more editing. All right, number six, ketones will help with inflammation and pain. Why? Because ketones are anti inflammatory molecules. If you have any type of inflammatory condition, whether it's an autoimmune problem or arthritis, and you go on the ketogenic diet, you're going to feel a lot less inflammation. And that's a really good clue to tell if you're in ketosis or not. All right, number seven, when you eat food, you are going to feel more satisfied. Okay, and this relates to another thing I talked about. When you have insulin resistance, you can't absorb as much nutrition because insulin is not working to help transport those nutrients into the cell. So when the cell becomes more sensitive to insulin, you are now going to absorb more nutrients and you're going to feel more satisfied when you eat. Whereas before you're eating, 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 and everything is just not filling you up and or satisfying you. Now it could be the type of food that you're eating is not nutrient dense, but there's also the factor of your body absorbing the nutrients. All right, number eight, better mood. If you were depressed before, if you had anxiety, you're going to find that you're just happier. You're just going to feel better. It's going to uplift your mood. Why? Because there's this thing called brain insulin resistance. Okay. And you're fixing insulin resistance in the brain, and the brain, the neurons are getting more fuel, and that greatly helps the neurotransmitters. It helps your hormones, it helps your mood. I mean, there are 15 studies, okay, that I looked at that all associate your mood changing when you're on the ketogenic diet. But the results are kind of mixed. Um, but I'll tell you why they're mixed, okay? Because some of the studies are on mice, and how do you really know if that mice had a shift in mood? I mean, it's kind of difficult. You can't really compare a mouse that's in depression with a human that's in depression. I think that's a real difficult one. So just because something is high fat doesn't mean it's ketogenic diet. And in some of these studies, they're using just a high fat diet, but the carbs are really high. Like 30% of the calories are carbs when it should be like 5% of the calories. Other studies, they just use ketones. They don't actually put the person on the ketogenic diet. And then they say, oh, yeah, see, ketogenic diet doesn't work for uplifting your mood because we use ketones. Well, taking ketones is different than doing the ketogenic diet. All right, number nine, and this is the best indicator to know that you're in ketosis out of all of these, and that is No appetite. You lose your appetite. Okay. You can go for a longer period of time without being hungry. Why? Because your body is finally eating fat when you're not eating. Because when you're going between meals, you no longer are dependent on the carbs. Your body can actually eat the fat on your actual body, which is a new concept for a lot of people that are dieting. And not having appetite makes it really easy to stick to long term. All right. So now that you have that information, the next best thing to know is what is the best version of a ketogenic diet to start and how do you do it? And for that, I put up this video right here.